Today I'm going to talk about what Dr. Montessori calls a 3-period lesson. And this is an idea that she took from Edward Sagan. Remember, he was the French educationalist who worked with special needs children in the mid-1800s. And in its most base terms, a 3-period lesson is a way to give language to a child. When a child is first learning to speak, you give them isolated words. You say, mommy, daddy, blanket. You give them individual nouns, and they begin to associate that sound formation with that object. Later, as the child becomes more proficient in their language, you give them more complete sentences. And this is how a child naturally learns language. The reality is that when children are in school, they don't always have the vocabulary that you need for school, and that's when you begin to add more and more vocabulary. So a 3-period lesson is initially used to introduce vocabulary. Now, when Dr. Montessori first started using a 3-period lesson, she didn't know why it worked, she just knew that it did work. So we're going to look at what a 3-period lesson is, and then we're going to talk about why it does work, and then we're going to broaden it, okay? So as I said, there are 3 periods. There's the first period, the second period, and the third period. And if you want to think about it iconically, the first period is when the child is absorbing the information. The second period is when the child is classifying the information. And the third period is when they have to retrieve the information. Okay? So there's specific language that is used in a 3-period lesson. In the first period, the child is told, this is. This is red. This is blue. Usually, the child is introduced to language of at least 2 to 3 things because they need to begin to discriminate between, okay, how is the red different than the blue? You don't give them just one object and name it. You give them something to compare. So the language is this is in the first period. In the second period, the language that is used is show me red, show me blue. The language that is used in the third period is pointing to something and you say, what is this? So that's the specific language that's used in a 3-period lesson. When we look at who owns the information, in the first period, the teacher owns the information because she knows what the vocabulary is. In the second period, both the teacher and the student are sharing the information. Show me red, show me blue. In the third period, the student now has the information because they can retrieve the information and say, this is blue. As a language lesson, the first period takes a very short amount of time because you're just naming it. The second period takes the longest amount of time because that's when the brain is classifying the information, categorizing it, trying to figure out this is like such and such, but it's not like such and such. And we spend far more time in that time period where the teacher is sharing and the child is trying to classify the information, to integrate into what they already know. So it is the longest amount of time. The third period, what is this? Short amount of time as well. Doesn't take long once it's been categorized to retrieve the information. The skill that is demonstrated by the student in each period. First period is the absorption stage. Second period is the association of the language to the object. And the third stage is the recall of the language. Now, remember I told you that Dr. Montessori really didn't have any idea at the time why this works. But what we know about what's going on in the brain is that in order for someone to learn something, first of all, the brain has to pay attention. The brain has to say, this might actually be interesting. And it has to exclude all of the other extraneous stimulus that's there. So that's the first thing. We've got to get the brain's attention. And the brain can decide, oh, this is not interesting to me. I'm going to shut down. And it goes and it pays attention to something else. Okay? What happens next is that the information needs to be related to prior information. Okay? When you're first learning something, your brain is trying to categorize everything. It's saying, oh, I know this is like such and such. And it's the job of the teacher to be able to give the child a mental set to start with. Today we're going to learn about colors. I've taught you about the primary colors. Today we're going to learn about secondary colors. And so we're going to relate prior information. I know about colors. And so the brain is kind of setting itself up and going, okay, I thought I knew everything about colors. I wonder what else there is to learn about colors. Okay? The information needs to be actively received. That's why, young children need to move. Even adults need to move. When you're first learning something new, movement is what triggers getting the information into the brain and being able to categorize it. But it also needs to be presented in an organized way. You'll notice that I lay my information out in an organized way, top to bottom, left to right. I'm modeling the reading process, but it's also a way where if you want to remind yourself of something, you can go back into my matrix and you can reread the definition. So when the information is organized in a way for the brain to associate it, it actually speeds up the learning process. When you're reading in a textbook, when college students are reading in a textbook, most of the time you highlight the chapter subheading and you'll make little notes. If you highlight everything that's in there, you're not able to go back to a definition or something like that. That's why definitions are usually bolded or italicized. It's a way to quickly go back and find the information because it's in an organized fashion. You have to have time to organize things. You cannot learn something efficiently and thoroughly the first time through. It doesn't happen. You have to go back and work with it some more, which is what all that second period is about. For young children, they're manipulating, they're getting it back off the shelf, they're redoing it, they're interacting with it again. As an adult learner, we may tangent off to a new idea and then come back and relate it to the primary idea that we're learning, okay? Nobody learns anything accurately without making mistakes. The brain learns by making mistakes, and it is for that reason that we need to have a self-correcting element in the work that we're doing. Because what happens is that the feedback generated by the it's the feedback generated by the student and not the teacher that actually solidifies the information. You can ask the teacher to refine something, to add more information, but your actual understanding of the concept is built within your brain. You don't take the teacher's information and wholeheartedly just memorize it, okay? Memorization doesn't work. Memorization is not understanding a concept. So it's this time period right in here that is the most important time period. Assessment, retrieving the information, being tested, it's not when learning actually happens, okay? The other thing is that emotions are tied in with the learning. There is added benefit to a modicum of stress, and stress can be excitement, it can be a little bit of fear. All of those things actually heighten the learning process because the brain is excreting a chemical that allows the learning to happen. However, retrieval of information is not enhanced with stress. So when you're studying for a test and you sit down and you look at that piece of paper and you go, I don't remember anything at all, that's your brain shutting down. So if you have a test to take, give yourself plenty of time, do lots of different things to relieve the stress, because your brain will actually inhibit the retrieval of that information under extreme stress.